Welcome. In today's video, we're going to be doing some cooling system upgrades to our 1996 Jeep Cherokee. The first one we're doing is the FlowKooler Hi-Flow water pump, and the second one we'll be doing is the Hi-Flow Thermostat housing from Hesco. So before we get started on pulling the water pump and thermostat housing, there's going to be a couple things I'm going to do. I'm going to drain out the coolant from the system, and then I'm going to remove the header panel and everything around the radiator so I could pull the radiator and do a flush on it. Now that I have the radiator drained and the header panel off, I'm going to pull the radiator to flush it, and that'll open us up to replace the water pump and the thermostat housing. So this is actually the perfect time to inspect and check out your heater hose and your radiator hoses, since you have to pull them off of the thermostat housing and the water pump anyways. So they're pretty cheap at, Rock Auto or AutoZone or O'Reilly's. So if you see any issues, just replace the hoses since you have to pull them off anyways. All right, so we have practically everything off. We have the lower radiator hose off, the upper radiator hose off, both heater hoses tucked off to the side, and the pigtail for the sensor on the thermostat housing unplugged. So the only thing we have now is just undo the belt tensioner so we could pull off the serpentine belt to get to the pulley that's on the water pump. So like I said, with inspecting your radiator and heater hoses, it's also good to inspect your serpentine belt just in case it has any cracks or anything in it. You might as well replace it at this point. And it's also good to just keep a spare in your vehicle. So when you rinse out your radiator and your radiator hoses, that would be a perfect time to flush your heater core. So you just stick the garden hose on either end of your heater hoses to push out any of the gunk or old coolant or anything out of your heater core and to clean everything. So just to show you guys, I'm going to flush out my heater core and I'm going to catch whatever comes out of it in this jug, just to show you guys why it's important to flush your heater core and to see how good my maintenance on the cooling system of this Jeep has been. I might have had the garden hose on a little bit too high. I shouldn't have put it on full blast. All right, it looks like that the water that's coming out of the heater hose is clear. So in a second, we'll check out how nasty my my coolant and my heater core was. All right, now that I got everything under my hood soaked, let's pull this jug. I'll get this back put back in place, and yeah, let's check out how nasty this is. So as you can see in the bottom, there is some debris in my coolant. A lot of it is sediment because I ran a magnet over it, and there was just very, very little metal in it, and that's from the iron 4.0 block. So with all that sediment just in the heater core, that's why it's a good idea to flush your radiator and your heater core before any cooling system upgrades or coolant flushes. So I am going to use the old sensor on the new thermostat housing, but if you have to run down to the parts store to get, new hoses or clamps or coolant or anything like that, it doesn't hurt to pick up a new sensor. So I just pulled off the old thermostat housing. Doesn't really look like there was anything wrong with it, but I will show you guys the difference between a stock thermostat housing and the Hesco Hi-Flow Thermostat housing. All right, so with removing the thermostat housing, I'm going to pull off the pulley that's on the front of the water pump so I can have access to the 3 bolts that are holding it onto the block. Then from there, I might loosen up all the bolts for this bracket that bolts to the water pump so I could just wiggle it and get the water pump out of there easier. All right, so what I do to usually get to these bolts is I'll just jam like a large screwdriver or a pry bar between 2 bolts on the side, and then that's when I will try to break the bolts free. Can be a little hard if it's been a long time since you've replaced your water pump. And also, since you have all of this stuff removed, this is also a good time to just shove the garden hose in there and try to flush all of this out also, because you could have some gunk in there too. And it's also a great time to scrape these mating surfaces so your gasket has a good seal on the block, so you don't have to, pull anything and redo it if you have any leaks. All right, so we're going to go through, I would say, the evolution of water pumps that I have put in this Jeep. You can see that they are all different. The main difference is just the impeller on it that pushes the coolant through the system. Other than that, they're all pretty much the same housing and everything. But we'll start off with the old one, or the oldest one. I would say this is what's in most of your guys' Jeeps if you have not upgraded your water pump. You could see that it's just an open fin style with nothing on it to help focus where the coolant is pushing through the system. And then with this one, this is actually the GMB Hi-Flow water pump from Rock Auto that I had in there. This one isn't bad at all. I would say the main difference between the FlowKooler and this one is the amount of impellers. There is 5 on this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And on this one, there is 7 of them. And this one is machined aluminum. And this one is just, I would say, stamped steel or stainless steel, maybe. But honestly, there's nothing wrong with this water pump if you have to upgrade your water pump. But I would say, just for the little bit of extra cost, I would go with the FlowKooler just because it's proven and everything. You know, a lot of people have those in their vehicles, and I haven't really heard any issues whatsoever with the FlowKooler. So that is the main difference between the 3. And then I will show you guys the difference with the thermostat housings. Honestly, they're exactly the same, but the only difference is, as you could maybe see, this part is machined out on the Hesco, and that part is not on the stock thermostat housing. So I'd say that's the biggest difference on why it makes it a high-flow thermostat housing, just because there's more surface area, or there's less surface area to actually restrict the coolant getting pushed out into the hose. Realistically, your thermostat is going to restrict coolant just because, you know, it's going to be in the way of the flow. But I figured, as just a little bit of a peace of mind, I will get this one because it just has more machined out, so it has to push more coolant. So that's what I figured. So now I'm going to get this sensor transferred over to this one, and then we're going to get the block scraped and start installing stuff. All right, so I got the surfaces on the block for the thermostat housing and the water pump scraped with a razor blade. I'm going to flush the block right now, and then I will go over this again with a fresh razor blade just to make sure that it is a good clean surface and it's there's nothing poking off of it or anything that could cause a leak. So I'll get this flushed and we'll check it out. All right, so now that I have the sensor and the new thermostat housing and the heater hose neck in the water pump, the thermostat housing and the water pump did come with their own gaskets, but honestly, I've never had an issue just with the Felpro brand from, O'Reilly's or AutoZone. So that's what I'm going to use. These are the part numbers to them if you need to order them up. 35024 for the thermostat housing, and 35582 for the water pump gasket. And I know when people install their thermostat housing or water pump, they have an issue, with keeping the gasket onto the housing, and this is where this comes in. I honestly just do the smallest dab of super glue in 1 or 2 spots on each part just to hold that gasket in place, so I don't have issues trying to wrestle with the thermostat, the gasket, and the housing, trying to get it all lined up, since it has that small ridge on the block for the thermostat. So that's what I do. I'm just going to put a small dab of super glue on each part, put the gasket on there, let it dry, and it should make installing it a lot easier. Alright, now that the gaskets are dried on there, I'm just going to install it in the reverse order. I'll do the water pump first, then the thermostat housing. So if I run into any issues, I'll get you guys. If not, once I get both of them installed, we'll check it out. So we got the water pump and the thermostat housing in. 0 issues with installing either of them. And with the bolts, I just got them a little bit more than snug. So if we have to remove anything, we shouldn't have a problem with it whatsoever. But now that all that's in, I'm just going to start hooking stuff up, putting pulleys back on, and hooking hoses back up. Alright, well, we got the Jeep completely back together. I double checked everything, make sure all the hose clamps and everything was tight. We are good to go. Now we're on the final step. So for the longest time, I used to just pour the coolant or distilled water just straight into the radiator to burp the system, till I bought one of these funnels. This thing was a game changer for me. So along with everything that I am doing in this video with the thermostat housing, water pump, everything, I'm going to have links in the description for all of that, and I'll have a link in the description for this if you don't have one of those. I'll get this on there and start filling it up. I'll put in the water wetter first. This stuff says it runs up to 20% cooler, but that's with straight water. I'll be doing 50-50 with water wetter, and it should make somewhat of a difference. But if it doesn't, it's not the end of the world. Figure it'll give you that peace of mind that'll maybe work. And after I got that in there, I'll add a whole gallon of just straight coolant. Then usually from there, I'll just I'll start doing distilled water. I just get 2 or 3 gallons of whatever distilled water from my my local grocery store. That usually does the trick. I know before using this funnel, burping the radiator was a time-consuming process. So this actually, if it doesn't go smooth for you usually, this makes a huge difference in burping it. So before in the funnel, it was just straight up distilled water. As you can see now, it has the tint from the coolant and the water wetter in there. So the thermostat housing, or the thermostat, did open, and I'm just getting out the residual air bubbles, and we should be good to go. And the last step I have is I'm gonna have Natalie hold the gas at about 3,000 RPMs so that impeller or the water pump is pulling as much coolant through the system as possible. And then that's when I will plug the funnel, pull everything, and put the radiator cap on. And then we should be completely done. it off, please.
That's it?
Yep. You're good. All right, and whatever excess I have, I just put it into the empty gallon of coolant. And yeah, from here we are done, guys. I did notice a little leak. It is at the bottom of the thermostat housing, so I just have to snug up that bolt just a little more, and we should be good. And that right there, you guys, is the install of the FlowKooler Hi-Flow water pump and the Hesco Hi-Flow Thermostat housing. If you do have any questions on either of the products, comment down below and I'll get back to you as fast as I can. And also, if you do have any tips and tricks on coolant flushes or anything involving the cooling system, making that process easier, comment down below to help us fellow XJ owners. I want to thank you so much for watching and have a good one, you guys. Bye.